Hello, this is Daniel Raymond, the voice behind Ray's Guide. Sometimes even the worst luck can have its upside. I've been way under the weather this weekend from a minor infection, which means that I've been tardy of any post relating to coverage of the 3.23 releases. But this has indirectly saved me from having made one of my most quickly obsoleted videos ever. You see, most of my content about new releases is timed for when it hits open PTU, and the full range of players can get access to it, because I see my audience as being players seeking relevant analysis and concrete suggestions. So my primary coverage of 3.23, for example, the Essentials video 23 for 3.23, was already published. So what I had planned for release was to do a video on what fun things a player in 3.23 can do by themselves with just the most basic of starter packages, specifically the Mustang Alpha, to provide a little counterpoint to all the pay-to-win accusations. And one of the first things I wanted to right up front describe was taking the site defense trial contract missions and protect site missions. Fly your little Mustang Alpha up to the door in the bunker and bring your trusty rifle in. Be careful. Sure, you could be at a bit of a disadvantage in it being awkward stuffing loot into that underbelly container, but that's all. Or it was until 10:15 Monday morning when CIG announced that all med beds were now going to be respawn capable with only range limits difference between the tiers. Suddenly, arriving in an FPS mission in anything less than a Pisces C8R or a ship capable of carrying a medical rover and said medical rover would be negligent in the extreme, and suggesting that a new player do anything less would be almost criminally bad advice. So that whole script had to be scrapped. But as I said, thankfully, before I had the embarrassment of publishing such a terrible piece of advice. So that's my first observation about this change. Solo FPS gameplay is now effectively locked behind the 555,000 UEC or $55 real world price of the Pisces C8R. Sure, you could upgrade your starter package to the C8R, but then think of all the starter gameplay paths that are blocked because the C8R isn't suited to them. Looking at this certain light, it's like CIG is saying Solo Persistent World FPS is a separate game, which you have to separately spend $55 for, the price of the Pisces C8R. Fortunately, there is something CIG can do, and can do it by tomorrow, if not today. Do it easily to blunt this. What is this easy fix? Make the Pisces C8 and C8R available for rent at all the spaceports at single-day prices that a new player who has just completed the tutorial can afford to spend and recover the cost of in their first successful FPS mission. I'm thinking high 8,000 for the C8 and a high 9,000 for the C8R. Now let's get into some of the items that won't be quite so easy to fix. Many have pointed out that this new change renders most of the current medical mechanics pointless. Why worry about healing injuries at a tier 1 or 2 med bed when you can just backspace and be 100% back at my portable respawn point and pull out a new set of gear from storage? Because let's be clear, anybody who doesn't finish an FPS mission without at least 3 sets of looted armor and weapons isn't trying. And the range limits are pretty much pointless, as nobody's going to want to have their mobile respawn point be more than 20 kilometers away, since the time to return would be that much longer. The list of medical mechanics that have fallen into the why bother just backspace list is quite long. You might be able to make defeat so quick and trivial in an arcade shooter or a match play game, but not in a persistent universe, because if defeat doesn't matter, nothing matters. So why be persistent? And the thing is, it's so obvious that CIG couldn't possibly have missed the implications of this. There's something else going on here. A second shoe that is going to drop. And that second shoe can only be Death of a Spaceman. I take this announcement to mean Tier 0 Death of a Spaceman is soon. Really soon. How soon am I talking about? I'm saying that if it happened the week after the Invictus Free Fly, I wouldn't be surprised. CIG isn't going to put the fundamental world balance get that far out of whack for long. They have to give you a reason to have persistent universe FPS carry tension and have a reason to be careful. Because if consequences are non-existent in a persistent world, what's the point of making it persistent? It has to be that being incapacitated be something to consider what to do. to have calling a rescue mission either be something to do or something to answer. And CIG's answer to these questions has always been found in this article over 11 years ago: death of a spaceman. In other words, having to do just backspace to quickly bounce back from an incapacitation is something you can do. Then what are the reasons you might not want to do it? So what will be the final implementation of death of a spaceman in 2024 actually be like? Well, my hope is that it particularly penalizes rapid-fire respawns. Respawns happening, for example, say less than an hour from your prior respawn should carry a hefty penalty. I hope that respawning to a Tier 3 bed is more costly towards death of a spaceman than in more advanced med beds, or that ships like the Apollo or Endeavour therefore aren't a waste. I think they may have other mechanics that they may have in that regard, such as a cooldown period that is longer for the less advanced beds. There's actually quite a lot of possibilities. But whichever they do, I am hoping that we finally get medical gameplay into the game. And that term very likely means something different to me than it is to you. To me, medical gameplay is different than medical mechanics. The med pens, med guns, med beds, etc. are all medical mechanics. Medical gameplay means that there's a real reason why someone would say, I'm a doctor.
I'm a doctor. I'm a doctor. I'm a doctor.
And the medical mechanics up to this point have been universally available and universally usable, that anyone can use them, and thus nobody has a reason to say, I'm a doctor. I've offered various solutions to this, so I won't delve far into it, but basically it involves that the medbed has an autonomous mode and an operated mode. The point was that with a proper operator, the medbed could do more, such as healing injuries above its tier or doing regenerations that counted less towards the death of a spaceman. There are a lot of possibilities, which is why we need to finally get on with it. Now, having started at one end of the scale with these new rules in Solo PvE, let's go to the other end of the scale and discuss the implications on group PvP at events like, say, Jumptown. And I am certain that every PvP org right now is thinking long and hard about how this change affects their plans, including their buying patterns for ILW. For example, I expect that it will be almost de rigueur for a Valkyrie dropship to have a Nurser rover in the back. It's just a combo package that fits so well together. I also expect that Connie owners and Corsair owners will be snapping up the Nurser rover as an option too. They're going to sell a ton of them, which is undoubtedly why they're doing it now, but I think that there are broader issues as to why they are doing it at all. Now, when I did my video on the tactics of player-built bases, I used the analogy of a chessboard, and I think that the analogy also applies to fleet planning under these new rules. In that video on base defense, I talked about the King building being the hangar with its automated warehouse and freight elevator, while the Queen building was the medical equipment. My logic was that, like in chess, if you've lost your queen and the other side hasn't, the end is soon and unlikely in your favor. So the same thing applies strongly to fleet planning. Your medical ships are your queen. If you keep yours and they lose theirs, the tide of battle will shift in your direction, as you can return casualties to the field quickly and they cannot. But the queen is not just one piece. What for you will be the knights, the bishops, the rooks, and pawns that will protect and support the mobility of the queen, and where can they most influence the conflict while boxing in and hopefully eventually destroying the opposing medical vehicles. The pilot that doesn't have constant awareness of, first, where their medical ship is, and second, where it needs to get to, is not going to be on the prevailing team. Now for an update on our giveaways, we have the special membership to help cover travel costs to have the channel have live Citizen Gun coverage with its own giveaway for a Hull C. And yes, I will be giving away the Colossal Cargo Container Carrying Craft, even if our live Citizen Con coverage has to be remote. Plus the regular Grow the Channel ship giveaways for giving some lucky player the Zippy Zazzy Active Zephyr, the Zeus 2 Cargo, and the marvelous multiplayer mining meta, the Erasta. One entry per video, just be a member for automatic entry, or subscribe and comment with the secret word. And the secret word for this video is my analogy for what the medical ships will be in a fleet. Fly safe, keep it real, and I'll see you in the verse. This is Danny Raymond for Ray's Guide.